mobile live stream here. I got some downtime here at work. It won't be as good as my normal streams because my normal streams are near perfect. So it's hard to be near perfect. No, obviously not being on a computer, especially today's stream. Ironically, this is the last sort of stream I should be doing because it's going to be talking about interactions I've had on X or Twitter today, which I can't bring up those interactions because I'm on the phone and I don't know how to do that. I don't think I could do separate windows and stuff. Also, it's only YouTube, so this is YouTube exclusive. So YouTube, best audience. Screw those Twitch people, right? Stupid. But no, it's good to be here. It's good to be talking to you all. So I wanted to talk a few things of interactions that I had between last night and today on X and on the panel last night. So let's wait and see if we can chum in a few people. What's up, Minuteman? What's up, John? See if we can chum in a few people when we get started. But yeah, I've had a pretty good day. I've been at work all day. I got some downtime here, maybe like 50 minutes. We'll see how long it ends up being. But it's been a pretty solid day. I will have to say one thing. I should have been more calm last night to both the original caller that wanted to talk about immigration and when I first got into Jay Stock's panel, and even a couple times later. I don't mind getting heated and stuff, but that was too short of a trigger, I think, last night. There's no excuse for that. I don't think it was incredibly egregious or anything, but it's important to try to improve myself. I think that's something that's important. And so now that I've said there's no excuse, I'm going to make an excuse. This herniated disc is really bumming me out, man. It's so when I started last night, I felt good. And within 15, 20 minutes while I was streaming, it was killing me. And what it's doing now is it's not just my back hurts, but I could feel a pain shooting down my leg. It starts off as like tingly in my leg, and then it becomes like quite the serious pain. And last night was sort of the first night that I could not sleep because of it. So I ended up getting to bed at like, I don't know, like 6 in the morning. I just could not fall asleep. Just every time I'd start to close my eyes, I would just have this shooting pain in my back and my leg. There's no audio? Oh. Oh, okay. Other people could hear. Thanks, Nico. Jerk. Yeah, I'm working on circulation of the legs. I'm trying to do walk. The physical therapist having me do exercises. So I'm trying to do all the right things. In fact, one second. One thing I should do right now is I gotta grab a water. I gotta keep hydrated. So, but it is what it is. Today it doesn't hurt so bad. So hopefully I can get through this stream without. No. I took the phone with me. I didn't say I was going to the bathroom. Let's see if I can set it up. There we go. That's not so bad. So, yeah, that's what's going on last night. So, I do have some criticisms of myself last night that I think are worth sharing. Roland on Discord, I think, says something, had some constructive criticism for me, which I appreciate. So, every time I get a donation, I have to do 20 push-ups. Oh, man, push-ups would really hurt my back right now. But, so I'll start by talking about calling into Jay Stock's channel last night. I called in. There was a panel. Now, it's difficult when you go into something like that, particularly when it's a panel of a bunch of people that agree, and it's not like a moderated debate. You're walking into it. So admit it was a little frustrating when I started to say something and just getting talked over. But I did kind of blow my top a little early, particularly on that one girl. And that's not called for. I do apologize to her, whatever her name was. Understand as well, I couldn't see everyone's name. So Pisco's voice, I know. The rest, I didn't really know. So I was getting people confused. Not that that matters. Not that that's an excuse. But so just to clear that up. My plan was going in there because I didn't know. It wasn't like a debate. I didn't know how long Jay Stock literally just messaged me on Discord, said, hey, do you want to come in? We're talking about the case. I said, sure. So you don't know if you got 20 minutes or if you got 2 hours. So my plan was what I wanted to do is go through the Ellie Honig article, who is the senior correspondent at CNN, who thought that this trial was a sham. And what I wanted to do was go through that article and make points. And whatever Pisco said that when I came in and I was hearing, one of the parts that wasn't a big part, but it is something that El Honing said, was that there was sort of due process problems because the underlying crime that they tried to prove wasn't even brought up until closing statements. And because New York's different, the prosecution closes last, which means that imagine that you're being accused of a crime and you basically don't even know what the prosecution's saying the underlying crime is. And then by the time you hear, you don't get a chance to respond. There's no sort of closing statements afterwards. And so I made that point, and Pisco and the other lawyer that was on there made a point to say that there were sort of pretrial motions, I forget the exact name of it, that outlined what that theory would be. I had not read those. I've read some of those since last night. And their argument was, well, that's sort of the normal way things happen, that you get these pretrial motions that outline what stuff will be, and then you don't talk about that until closing statements. I reject that. I reject that wholeheartedly. I don't think that's the case. I think that so many people that rely on their credibility would not be complete and total buffoons like Ellie Honing, who I might not like anything Ellie Honing says. I'll plead ignorance to ever having really listened to him before. But the idea that he's the senior legal correspondent at CNN and he's going to say something that's just blatantly, easily provably false to anyone who's a lawyer, I reject that. The same with constitutional law scholar Jonathan Turley, who I follow quite frequently, as well as a litany of other people. So the idea that Pisco and this other lawyer are saying, no, this is common, this is how things go, no problem there, I reject that. However, as Roland points out on Discord, the problem is optically I lose that portion of the debate. I think I'm fundamentally right, although I can't prove it with specifics. I think I'm fundamentally right given the direction that so many people, that even people like CNN's legal correspondent, senior legal correspondent that hates Trump, is calling out of how that's sort of egregious. And I think I'm making the point that even if it was in pretrial motions, this is stuff that should have been discussed in front of the jury, to which the defense then gets to respond in front of the jury. But the problem is, because I don't know the technical aspects of how trials play out, the names of what the pretrial motions were, people that are lawyers end up optically looking better than me. This is a problem I have had in debates in the past, particularly with economists. Even if I end up being right, if I'm debating like Econoboy and I say these lockdowns are terrible, they're going to devastate the economy, the massive money printing is going to lead to inflation, the economy is going to suffer for years to come, I end up being right about that in the long term. But the problem is, if you're in the field and you could talk the technical jargon, optically, sometimes it ends up looking very persuasive to people that are in an audience. Now, my audience is going to take my side most of the time unless I get my ass kicked. So it's not fair to say, but most of the people in my audience think I did well. The point I'm making is I could have done better. And I think that if I was an objective person in the audience and I was listening to me and those two lawyers last night on that portion of the discussion, I could have concluded that they knew more what they were talking about than I did. And so I think it's a fair criticism to say, well, that means one of two things. That either means that I'm wrong and they were right about the specific issues being discussed. And that could be the case on that specific issue, which is I asked Pisco if they could find any cases where that had been the norm in the past. And we'll see if they're able to do that. But maybe I am wrong. It's difficult for me to tell what a normal trial looks like when there's sort of an underlying crime. Now, I'll get to in a minute what more evidence for my side of this. But that still could be the case. I leave room for that. However, I think what's more likely is I was basically outclassed in the sense of understanding the particular legalese and jargon of what a process looks like. So, for example, you could see a clip of a college policy debate. And in that clip, you could see something crazy happen. And you might say, well, that's crazy. Now, as someone who was a college policy debater, I could say, oh, let's say, for example, there was a famous incident where, no, that's not a great example. let's say, for example, the last team to speak stands up and they say, by the way, here's a completely new argument. Our opponents are racist, and they don't get a chance to respond. And the judge says, yep, sounds good to me. You might say, that doesn't seem right. How could you have a debate where a brand new argument's made up and the other team doesn't get to respond? Right? And so let's say I'm debating Randy West and he says, I think that looks like a dumb clip. And I would say, Randy, here's the problem. You don't understand. Did you see the first affirmative constructive? Do you understand what's going on with that? Did you see? When the negative was reading their disadvantages and then they read their counterplan, did you understand that they said the counterplan was conditional? Did you understand that? Do you even know what that means? Do you know what conditional means? Obviously, the permutation that the affirmative made was one that was just a test of competition. It wasn't a permutation that they were actually going to go for as a policy plan. And so given that, you have to understand how the negative then is a distinct advantage there. Because when they speak for 15 minutes in the block, you understand that there's no time for the first affirmative rebuttal to be able to respond to that in the mere 6 minutes they're given. Did you even understand that? Did you read the judge philosophy before the round? Did you read those judge philosophies? You didn't? How about the ADA rule book? Did you read that? Or was this an NDT tournament? So yeah, I just think you're wrong. Now, it could be that Randy was objectively correct, but anyone listening would say, wow, Rob clearly knows more about debate. Listen, he knows all of this jargon. So that's what I feel occurred. However, no excuses. What that is exemplifying is that I had a poor game plan going in. How much does truth and facts matter in the college debate sphere? Not much. For example, if you make an argument that isn't responded to, even if the argument's incorrect, if there's never a response to it, most judges would say, it depends on each judge, but I as a judge would say, look, it's not my job to do work for you. You have to point that out, and if you didn't, then I'm going to accept. For example, I had a team one time that won a round in front of me, and part of their argument was Vietnam was a landlocked country. The other team conceded. Okay. Anyways, the plan I should have had was to focus on more important issues. Now, this is particularly important when debating someone like Pisco, and it's particularly important when debating in an environment where it's you versus a lot of people, because your chance to talk is going to be limited. It's not even that, actually. That's not the correct thing. It's that things are going to go in different directions. You'll say something, and then 3 people will respond, and it branches out. Let me give you an example of how this occurs. When we're talking about the Jamal Bowman stuff later, I get to sort of the conclusion like, Pisco says that when Bowman said, I didn't intend for the fire alarm to go off, what he really meant was, I did intend. That's the punchline. That's the stinger. That's what everyone that's listening, regardless if you're a Pisco fan or a fan of me, a Democrat, a Republican, an independent, libertarian, every single person should say, wow, that's bullshit. That is ridiculous. That is amongst the most bad faith things I've ever heard. It is, which is why I'll bring it up every time I talk to him. But what happens then is Pondering jumps in. And he's like, well, wait. And he goes to a different direction. And then Pisco and Pondering, Pisco pondering, they're going back and forth. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, wait a minute, I want to go back to what I said there at the end. And everyone's like, no, we're moving on from that. Right, that's the sort of thing that happens. So you have to be cognizant of that. So you have to have a game plan going in. And normally I'm quite good. So I am thinking, how do I get better? Because I'm going to be in a panel with a bunch of people on the left next Wednesday talking about this case. And so what you should do, and what I should do, is highlight the most important facts first. And that would be that of a double standard, that they didn't do things like charge Hillary Clinton, which I thought I was much better on than Pisco. And that is highlighting that the underlying crime, that this was somehow a federal election law, is bullshit. Federal election violation. I think those two things are the most important things to hit first. And if I would have done that, because I think after we got through that first part, when I start going through the Ellie Hoenigan article, I think I'm doing much better. Because what they can't defend is this was a novel theory that's never been done. And that's the other thing. When I talked in that first part where I admitted I could have done better and said, I don't know, I haven't seen cases like this, the truth is no one has. It's never happened. That's the truth. Now, Pisco and them are going to be okay with that. when we talked about donating, the judge donating to a PAC whose goal was to stop Trump's radical right-wing agenda. And Pisco says, yeah, that doesn't look good, but for me to get upset about it, I would need to see bias. One of the things that I think is worth bringing up, and I will be bringing this up, I need to read the transcript more of the case, of the closing arguments, but apparently, according to Jonathan Turley, the judge, rightfully so, said that he would be the one to read the instructions to the jurist of what the law is, the definition of the law. Now, that's probably not good if he doesn't understand the law, but fair enough, whatever. So he said that the prosecution and defense were not allowed to do that. He also allowed testimony to be brought in that showed that Michael Cohen pleaded guilty to a federal election campaign issue, and that the other guy, Pecker, cooperated or something with the federal election crime investigation. But he said, the judge said, that that could only be used for context, that the jury was not to take that as an admission of guilt or that a crime had occurred. And yet he allowed the prosecution in closing statements to repeatedly say that the crime had occurred and that Trump had ordered it. And Jonathan Turley said, that's remarkable. The reason I bring this up is if Pisco's argument is, well, the donating to the Biden camp to stop Trump's radical agenda, that would only be a big deal if there was a bias. That's just one issue of a litany that people that were watching said they felt was examples of incredible bias. Now, of course, someone who's bad faith like Pisco, which we'll get to the Bowman stuff, which proves that he's just a bad faith sack of shit, of course they're going to say, no, it's not bias as long as it benefits their side. That's what they'll say. So, but those are the areas that I should focus on. On the Jamal Bowman thing, briefly, if you go back and you watch it, I put a thread out on X today that's worth watching or worth reading if you want to know my thoughts on this. I know it probably gets tiresome from the people in my audience, and I know the left-wing audiences hate when I bring up the Jamal Bowman thing. The reason Jamal Bowman was an issue in the first place was because he committed the same crime that they were calling many of the nonviolent January 6 people insurrectionists for, which was delaying an official proceeding. That's why he pulled that alarm. And so to listen to them cope, all they had to say was, yeah, that could have been the case. I don't think there's proof beyond a reasonable doubt, but okay, what he did was really bad. Instead, so many people defended Bowman. Now, Pisco, being a little smarter, kind of said that first part, but he made excuses for, well, maybe he was just trying to aggress the door, which led to a big debate with me and him, and I thought that it was garbage. Then once I let it go, Pisco's the one who kept bringing it up on X. Then the video came out that showed that I was right and Pisco was wrong. He never even tried to go out the door after he pulled the alarm. Pisco still said that was the most likely scenario. Very bad faith. Now, at this point, the argument's not about Jamal Bowman. The argument's about someone who I really enjoyed debating. And so I'll give my spiel here, which is basically the thread I had on X. Pisco was my favorite person to debate. The reason was because I liked him. I thought he was a likable person who had sort of similar quirks as me. We're both debate pro assholes. And I thought that he got in the weeds with me on many of these issues. Most people just say, nothing happened, co-parter, whataboutism. That's 95% of the left. So it's nice to have someone who actually pushes back. And pushback's important. You shouldn't go through life in a bubble with just people that agree with you. You should be looking for people that can push back in the best possible ways to ensure that you're making arguments that are true or that your worldview is accurate. And one of the things that happens when you do that is you become stronger and you learn more, because for me, that's sort of a competitive, although it's just online bullshit, it's sort of competitive, which encourages me to do more research than I would otherwise and come to an even more refined argument and position. So that's why I enjoyed baiting Pisco. It wasn't for clout or anything. Pisco and I have probably relatively the same amount of viewers. I don't even know how much he streams. So it wasn't for that. I did it for my enjoyment. And there were many times I called into Pisco's show that I wasn't even streaming, just to bullshit to him. So implicit in that, though, one of the things that made it enjoyable is, let's say you're playing a board game with someone. The enjoyment's taken out. I'll give you an even better example. When I used to be in the debate team, we would have these 15-passenger vans with like the entire debate team, and you might have to go drive 10 hours, 12 hours to get to a particular tournament. So you come up with like stupid stuff to talk about in the car, one of the things we do is play games. So we called it the movie game. And the movie game was simple. I would start off by saying a movie to the next person, and that person could veto that movie if they wanted or accept it. But once they accepted it, the game was on. So I might say like Jurassic Park. Now they have to name an actor or actress in Jurassic Park. So they would say Jeff Goldblum. Then the next person has to name an actor or an actress or a movie that hasn't already been said that Jeff Goldblum's in. So maybe they would say The Fly. Then the next person has to name another person in that movie. And if they can't, they either get a strike or they can call bullshit. If they call bullshit, then the person who said The Fly has to name another person in that movie. Fun game. That's the game we play. When you're sitting up in the driver's seat or the passenger seat, you can't see what's going on all the way in the back. And we played one day, and this guy, it was the most incredible performance I'd ever seen. He's pulling actors out of his ass that I'd never heard of, just crushing everyone. We played this game for an hour and a half. And then we find out he's just on his phone Googling. He's like on IMDb. We never played that game with him anymore. That was it. Because there's no trust. You don't want to play a game with someone that you know is just cheating or that's just a bad faith asshole. And that's how I feel about Pisco. There was something in me that said, if I make a persuasive enough argument, even though he's bad faith in this sense, and I do overuse the word bad faith, I need to get better at that. There's different levels of bad faith. There's bad faith like, I'm a big Hillary supporter and Trump hater, so I think it was okay the FBI didn't charge Hillary for deleting subpoenaed emails, or her team. That's probably bad faith that you're just saying that because, right? But that's different, and I say this in the thread, than when I say, remember when Hillary said to a black radio host, oh yeah, I keep hot sauce in my purse? That was racial pandering. And if that person said, she never said that. And I said, yeah, here's the audio. And they sit there and listen to the audio, or they watch the video of it, and they're like, no, she didn't say it. No. And I'm like, but it's right there. It's at the 7-second mark. No. That's it. That is bad faith to a level that's like, then all conversation is irrelevant at this point. It's irrelevant because we can't even have an agreement on to be, in general, honest about real things. And so, given that Pisco is my favorite person to debate, and then he did that with the Bowman thing. He said, well, I think when Bowman said, I didn't intend for the alarm to go off, what he really meant was, I did intend. Hours upon hours, hundreds of hours of discussion I've had with him, either on X or on stream or research that I did, talking, all of that, I realized, oh yeah, it was all worthless. It was still beneficial to me in that I learned stuff and I had fun doing it. But it was worthless in the sense that I'm playing with the guy on IMDb in the movie phone. He's just a cheater. He's just a bullshitter. He's bad faith. Dude, in the biggest example of bad faith that I've seen, literally saying he meant the exact opposite. Lying to law enforcement is a crime, but I don't think it's a lie because my belief is when he said that, he meant the exact opposite. That's why it's an issue. So, anytime I'm in a conversation with Pisco, I think it's important, and I would recommend all of us do this. It doesn't have to be the entire time because I want to respect the other people that are on a panel or the host or the audience. But I think that it is my duty to let everyone know just how much of a bad faith piece of shit he is. So that they could take that in context when he's saying things like, I didn't see any bias. Oh, we know what Trump's intent and he's guilty. Oh, we don't know what Biden's intent is. When he's saying things like that, he's full of shit. He might believe that, he might not. We don't know because he's a blatant bullshitting liar. And the audience has the right to know that, the character of the people that are debating. Anyways, that's my spiel on that. So when I bring it up last time, by the way, it would only take me, let me show you what I'm going to do. I'm on Wick's panel with Pisco again this week. I told Wick just asked me if I would do the panel. I said, sure. No problem. And then he told me Pisco was on it. I said, hey, can you give me a little time to bring up this Jamal Bowman stuff? Because otherwise I'm not doing the panel. It's not that I'm running from Pisco. It's just that I think this needs to be said. So he said, sure. So at the end of the debate, we're going to talk about Jamal Bowman on the panel Wednesday, which is absolutely fine. But let me go through how quick it would be. Pisco, isn't it true that you said it was inconceivable that Jamal Bowman didn't think that alarm was going to go off? Yes. And didn't you say that lying to law enforcement about material facts of the case are something that should be prosecuted? Yes. And don't you agree that Jamal Bowman told law enforcement that he didn't intend for the alarm to go off? Yes. But your excuse for why that's not a lie, even though you said it's clearly a lie, it's inconceivable that he thought that, your excuse is you feel he meant the exact opposite. You feel when he said, I didn't intend for the alarm to go off, that what you really think he meant was, I did intend. He could say, yes. And I would say, there you have it, folks. That's what a bad faith piece of shit Pisco is. He'll literally say words mean the opposite of what they're intended if it means keeping a Democrat out of trouble. Okay, that's it. That's literally how long it would take. But the problem is, this is what will happen. Hey, Pisco, didn't you say that it would be inconceivable that Jamal Bowman didn't think the alarm was going to go off when he pulled the alarm? Well, I said a lot about this, and here's the thing. Rob wants to talk about this, and he'll talk about it when he's saying that this is something because he feels that he doesn't understand. And it makes you look bad, Rob. It's like you should do a manifesto. And you could talk about this all day if you want. Just go off on this because you know that you don't have fucking facts on the other thing you're saying. And what I said was eminently reasonable. What I said was there could be a chance that he was going to unlock a door. And we had a long conversation about locked doors and about fire alarms would be able to unlock something. And what I said was I was talking to people and I was giving some pushback on people on the left that were saying that this couldn't occur. And I was saying it could occur, but we don't have evidence beyond a reasonable doubt. And it's something that he could push to try to get out there. And maybe he didn't know if the global alarm was going to go off. And I guess there's still a chance, which I admitted, that he was thinking that he could delay. But we just don't have proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And what I said was that I did think and supported the fact that he should be charged with illegally pulling a fire alarm, which shows that I'm not biased. And he was charged for that. And that's a charge that I accept. So when Rob brings this up, he's making it paint this picture. And then I say, right, that was a lot of words to not answer my question. I should have turned my head around, my bad. That's why it takes 40 minutes. And by the way, it's like that with every single topic with him. Everything. You could be like, I have 3 questions. It will take me 3.5 hours to get through those 3 questions. He can't answer. Remember, the first interaction, one of the first interactions I had with him was, I said, we're talking about Russiagate, which I happen to be right about, go figure, that it was illegal to spying on Trump. I said, hey, Pisco, should the FBI have to attempt to verify facts before they use it for a FISA warrant? And he rambled on for 4 minutes. Just a yes or no will suffice. Again, that's why I like debating someone like Andrew Wilson. He's not going to beat around the bush. He'll tell you the truth. He might explain his position, but he'll give you a straightforward answer. So last night what happened was Pisco first admits, yes, he did say that it's bullshit that Bowman didn't think the alarm was going to go off. But then after all of his hemming and hawing, he changes his story. He says, I don't remember saying that. You go back and watch the video. First he says, yes, I said that. And then when I get to the conclusion, and I say, okay, so Pisco's saying that he didn't intend, him saying he didn't intend for the alarm goes off, that's not a lie because what he really meant was he did. And Pisco goes up in this long rant and he says, I don't even remember saying it. And I was like, yeah, you did. No, I don't remember. It doesn't matter if he said that part or not. You can skip all of it. This dude thinks when a guy told law enforcement, I didn't intend for the alarm to go off, what he really meant was he did intend for the alarm to go off. That's bad faith. Period. That's it. But I went back and found the tweet where Pisco says it was inconceivable. He said, you go look for it. I went, I looked for it, I posted it to X, I tagged Pisco. No response. But it doesn't matter because it achieved what his audience wanted. So if you listen to Pisco's audience, and people have sent me clips of this, like from his Discord, they'll be like,
Rob's going on the Bowman thing again, just because Pisco said that maybe he tried to push the door to unlock it.
No, that is not why I'm talking about this. It is very simple. Pisco said, when this guy told law enforcement, I didn't intend the alarm to go off, the reason that's not a lie, which Pisco admitted that would be a lie, that's bullshit. The reason it's not a lie is because Pisco says, when he says I didn't intend, I think what he really meant was I did intend. That's it. So when you hear him saying, I don't think Judge Merchan showed bias Wednesday, remember, that's the guy we're talking about. Judge Merchan could have came out and said, by the way, I'm biased, and I'm doing everything I can to send Donald Trump to prison. And for all we know, Pisco would say, when Merchan said he was biased, what he really meant was, I'm not biased. That's, oh, okay. Nothing to see here then. That's how bad it is. How can you have a conversation like that that's meaningful? So, that's the point. That's what we'll talk about against Wednesday. Oh, here's the other thing. The reason I made the thread today was, did anybody see the clip of, what's his name, Dave Smith with Chris Cuomo? Anybody see this? I saw that, Robert. I definitely did. The clip's phenomenal. Basically, the gist of it is, and we'll get to, this is my first fight in Twitter today then. I think it was the first one. The clip's basically talking about ivermectin because Chris Cuomo now takes ivermectin. He's prescribed and taking ivermectin for COVID symptoms or vaccine-related symptoms, I believe. It's therapeutic. He's taking it now. And Dave Smith's like, you and your network were calling it horse dewormer. You were picking on people. And Cuomo goes, not me. I never did that. Play the tape. They play the tape. He's like, it's a dewormer. Making fun of, like, Joe Rogan. Now, it's incontrovertible proof. The audience is even like, ooh. And without shame, Cuomo's like, no. Sanjay Gupta, when he was saying about, and goes off on this spiel, just like Pisco would. Now, there's a lot of parallels here. Cuomo seems like a likable guy. I know you might not think that, but Cuomo seems like a guy, if you can put politics aside, he's probably a douchebag, but you could probably have a beer with the guy. He seems like he'd make me laugh. Even Tucker has said as much. Like, Cuomo's kind of a funny guy. He's kind of a decent guy in real life. Right? Sometimes Cuomo says things that, not very often, but sometimes he says things that sound reasonable, sound worth putting out in the public narrative. Same with Pisco. But when push comes to shove, he is a biased, bad faith bullshitter. He lied about, I never said that. When evidence is presented right in front of him, he goes, no. And Dave Smith's right to bring it up. And anytime anyone has a conversation with Chris Cuomo, if I am ever getting interviewed by Chris Cuomo, I will guarantee that I bring that up. Remember that time you got bodied by Dave Smith? Because you were ranting on CNN when you were there about, horse dewormer and trust the science and these people are ridiculous. And now you take ivermectin and then you lied and say you didn't do that? And then when the video evidence was shown, you tried to weasel out of it? You remember what a little COVID authoritarian you were? All of these people should be shamed. These COVID authoritarians. Oh, but Rob, we're here to talk about, the Bragg trial of Trump. Why are you bringing up something unrelated about COVID? I'm sorry, no amnesty from me. Not unless there's some sort of contrition. That's what they want, though. That's what all of the people that were on the wrong side of things, that's what they want. And there's a difference. There's being on the wrong side and being like, okay, maybe I was wrong, but I was trying the best. I'm not saying you have to rub that in someone's face all the time. But the person that was out there like, you're taking horse dewormer, who's now taking the same drug. That person should be ridiculed. And it should be shoved in their face every time they have an opinion on anything. Just so everyone watching can see the character of the person that's saying these things. That's how I feel about Pisco. That's how I feel about people that tell such blatant lies and exhibit bad. If you either exhibit bad faith to that level or you have a position that is so repugnant, it should be brought up every time. Tiberius D, I'm going to be on a panel with next Wednesday. Tiberius D believes the following two things. All of my friends that weren't vaccinated should have been fired from their jobs. Fuck you. He also believes it was, and I'm quoting now, based that the FBI killed all the people at Waco, including children, because, hey, that's on the parents. They were collateral damage. It was based. So I guarantee I'll be bringing that up because that is a position that's so repugnant that I shit you not. We were having this conversation on Discord the other day, not like just through text. And he said, bro, but he doesn't deny it. He admits, yes, he believes those two things. And he goes, oh, but we're allies. Why can't we talk about things like tariffs? What? Why do I care what your position on tariffs are when you advocate for the FBI murdering children? So, argument with Hutch. There's another lefty that I've debated on X. I make this big threat basically articulating what I just told you about Chris Cuomo and then how I'm tying that to Pisco and his bad faith. Hutch's response is an entire thread about Pisco's bad faith. This is what he did, and see how Cuomo's doing it as well. And Hutch's point is, but we should have shamed people that were taking ivermectin. My response is, that's irrelevant. Regardless of what Hutch or you or me or anyone else thinks of the efficacy of ivermectin, it's irrelevant to a conversation about Chris Cuomo, who shamed people for taking ivermectin, called it dewormer, and now is taking ivermectin and saying, I never said that. It doesn't matter if you or me think ivermectin works. What matters is Cuomo does. And he shamed people. And he lied about it. So that's what I told Hutch. And Hutch's point was, I think we should be focused more on the people that did take ivermectin and how shameful it is. Now, this is an example, and you'll see it's a theme today of me on X. If you go to my X feed and see the back and forth I had with people. One of the tools that sort of the left is used to, they've controlled so many cultural institutions, they're used to being in bubbles and having their own way totally. So when they go to their college classes or their high school classes, there's a lefty. When they turn on late night comedy, there's a lefty. It's everywhere. So they think they can control the direction of the conversation. So if I say, hey, Chris Cuomo is a hypocrite and he should be called on it for his stance on ivermectin, Hutch says, I don't think you should be talking about that. I think your priorities should be focused over here on the people that suggested taking ivermectin. Sorry, Hutch. I understand, just like the people that get upset about me bringing... And by the way, this is an entire thread. 80% of it's about Pisco being bad faith. No response to that. This is one of the reasons why so many people, particularly on the left, don't want you bringing up. They don't want you bringing up their double standards. They don't want you bringing up how their bad faith sacks of shit. Please don't bring those topics up. Can we just talk about the one thing I want? Can we do that, please? No, I'm sorry. I don't play that game. Nope. You can talk to someone else if that's the case. If I agree to come talk to you about a certain subject, we'll talk about that subject. If I start a thread and I'm talking about a certain subject, I'm uninterested in you telling me I should be talking about something else. But if we are going to play that game, Hutch, if I should be talking about the people that, in your words, with no scientific information suggested taking ivermectin, what's a bigger deal, that or people like Dr. Fauci and the hashtag trust the science people telling us that if we stood 6 feet apart, it would be more safe, that we find out was based on nothing, or that locked down schools that was based on no good evidence, or that embraced lockdowns in the first place, or that told us that we would have almost no risk if we got the vaccine, or that there weren't side effects that were serious of the vaccine, or that the virus couldn't have came from Wuhan. In a week where we're finding out that Dr. Fauci's team was intentionally subverting Freedom of Information Act requests, and Fauci was lying in front of Congress over and over again about whether or not him and his team funded gain of function in Wuhan, Hutch's priority is telling me I can't talk about Chris Cuomo being a hypocrite about ivermectin. Instead, the real important thing to focus is on people like Joe Rogan that were talking about ivermectin. That's the real important thing. Not Dr. Fauci, not Birx, not Francis Collins, not them. Oh, but see, that's different. When Hutch wants to talk about some group, why isn't he allowed to talk about it? Why should he have to talk about everything else? Of course, he didn't respond when I mentioned, why aren't you concerned with Fauci? So that was argument one. Let's think of some other arguments I had. There's some excellent exchanges I had that are phenomenal, of just nobody people, some of which I've talked to before, some of which I haven't. I put a thread up yesterday. May 31st is the 4th year anniversary of an insurrection. Now, I know we joke around a lot here, but that is serious shit. Our government was almost overthrown. Violent people stormed the center of our government with lethal weapons, burned down a guard station, hurt dozens of law enforcement and Secret Service people. Politicians ignored it or cheered it on. Most of the people were never arrested. There wasn't a big enough FBI investigation. Some prominent politicians, including a president, made fun of the targets of that insurrection. Made fun of Donald Trump. Oops, I'm sorry, I gave the game away. Made fun. It's time we hold these people accountable for that insurrection. May 31st, 2020. The left-wing insurrection to burn down the White House. Oh, wait. You're not talking about January 6th? No, we can't talk about this insurrection. So then this person says, what's one of the things I tell you? Let's see if anyone in the chat can get you. What's one of the things we talk about a lot? My central issue is the double standard and the corruption that I see in our institutions. So I'll debate someone that says, nah, let's just do a hypothetical debate. They'll say, nah, no, there's no double standard. I'll debate you on that. I'll say, okay, let's take case one. Do you think Trump obstructed justice? Yes. And should he face accountability? Yes. And why? He told people to move boxes. Well, did they get those boxes back? Well, they did, but still, just trying is an act of obstruction. Okay. Hillary Clinton's team deleted subpoenaed evidence. They never got the boxes back. They were destroyed. That's obstruction, right? Well, what is it they say once I blow them out in the debate? What is it that 50% of them will say? I mention this all the time. They'll always say, can anyone tell me what they say when I say Hillary's team did it? And I'm not going to say, of course they're going to say, that's whataboutism, all that. That's not what I'm talking about. Nope, it's not the same. There's a strategy that they'll try to use to get out of the debate. They might say whataboutism, it's not the same. But one of the things they'll say is, happens all the time. Can anyone guess? Or does anyone know? I'll give you a clue. It's designed to make you think like they're reasonable. What would they say to an audience of like you or me if I say Hillary Clinton's team deleted subpoenaed evidence? What would they say to sound reasonable to us? I know someone's capable of getting this. I talk about it all the time. It's one of the NPC archetypes that I deal with constantly. Constantly hear this argument. Brianna Wu made this argument. Nope, not that's in the past. Justin Freakin made this argument. There was a guy I debated, it was a right-winger. There you go, Inversity nails it. Okay, then yes, lock her up too. She should be locked up. Non-playable characters, NPC. They say whataboutism, they say it was a long time ago, but what I'm talking about specifically here is you'll say, oh, there's this double standard, blah, 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 and they'll go, well, then, yeah, sure, I have no problem with Hillary being locked up. That's fine. Now, they're saying that because they wouldn't have said that in 2016 when, she was the candidate for office, but now it doesn't matter to them. So which I always say, okay, if you feel that way, and my issue is there's a double standard, then why aren't you outraged by the double standard? You are now conceding that she should be locked up, but she wasn't. The FBI let her off the hook while aggressively pursuing Trump. That's more serious. An FBI that lets criminals go that they like and targets people they don't is a more serious infraction than what either Trump or Hillary were accused of. So if you feel Hillary should be locked up, why haven't you spoken up about the double standard at the FBI? And of course, they never have a response. Because the truth is, they don't really believe lock her up. They don't mind if she would be locked up. You have to understand, to most of these Democrats, it's not that they're, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not that their highest priority is defending Democrats. That's not what it is. What do you think the core belief of most of these people, what is the core political belief, the philosophical belief that unites almost all of these people I talk to on the left? Is it Democrats winning? Defending power? Yeah, but there's one thing. What's on their mind? What do they care about? No, it's not just stopping the right. It's more, that's right, Minuteman. That's it. Orange man bad. That's it. That's their entire belief system. That's it. They might be people that for years argued about the importance of free speech, but they'll support censoring Trump. They'll support censoring Trump supporters. They might be people that wrote dissertations on the Soviet Union jailing political opposition, but they'll support the jailing of Trump. That's their belief. That's why they say someone like me is obsessed with defending Trump. I'm not. I criticize Trump all the time. My issue is the two-tier system. That's my issue. In fact, we'd have been better off if Trump would have never ran for office for the second time. We would have been better off if Vivek or Ron DeSantis won the primary. That's who I was rooting for. But because they, just like when people that you see that think everything's racist, when they accuse you of being racist, that's because they're projecting. They view everything through the lens of race. So, if you're working at a McDonald's and there's a black man and white man standing there, and you go to the white man and go, "Can I take your order?" They say, "That's racism. You went to the white man first." And you might say, "Oh, no, I just thought I saw him walk in first." Nope, it's racism. You did it because of his skin color. That's it. Why do they think that you did it because of skin color? Because everything they do is because of skin color. So that must be how everyone else is. That's their belief. It's the same with Trump's derangement syndrome. All I care about is getting Trump. So the people that speak out against the cases against Trump, they must only care about saving Trump. That's what they believe. So when they tell you you're in a cult, they're really projecting because they're in a cult. And their cult is Trump derangement syndrome. Orange man bad is all that matters. Their politician, the Democrats, and even establishment Republicans, are a dime a dozen. You could replace any of them. If Hillary Clinton goes out, that's okay. There's someone to replace. If Joe Biden goes out, that's okay. There's someone to replace. So if they have to send one of their legion of politicians to jail, and it also means sending Trump to jail, they would happily do it. Happily. Sure. Why not? So they'll try to sound reasonable. Yeah, throw him in jail. But they won't do it when it means losing power. They won't do that. So, for example, they wouldn't say, yes, Biden deserves to be in prison for mishandling classified info. They won't say that, will they? They might say that 5 years down the road. Once Biden's gone and has no chance of being elected again, then they'll say, maybe you're right. Maybe Biden should have been charged. That's what they'll say. I'll guarantee it. It's exactly what they... You can go all the way back to Bill Clinton. Hashtag Me Too. Believe all women. What about Bill Clinton's accusers? Yeah, maybe we should have did something, but he's not involved in the Democratic Party anymore. Really? He just led a fundraiser for Biden the other day. So anyways, back to the thread. I'm talking about May 31st, 2020, left-wing insurrection. What do you think the first comment is? Can anyone guess? It's a two-parter. This might be a little hard. Remember what we just talked about. That they'll try to seem reasonable. What do you think the first comment was? It's a two-parter. I don't know if anyone saw the thread. I don't think a lot of people that follow me on X. Let's see if anyone has a guess. The first part's easy, given what we just talked about. I know there's people that aren't typing that are like, I know the answer. You didn't know it'd be a quiz show today. It's like, no, it wasn't a long time ago, Orange Man Bad. It was. So I say May 31st, 2020. They say, lock them up. What about January 6th? Got it? So I do a thread talking about a left-wing insurrection. The very first response from a left-winger is, fine, then lock them up. What about January 6th? You see? Now, this is the same person if I was on someone's thread that was talking about January 6th, and I said, what about the left-wing insurrection? They'd go, that's whataboutism. That's whataboutism. Now, we're not talking about that. It's not whataboutism. It's showing that there's a two-tier system. But as soon as I make a post, what's the very first thing they say? Sure, lock them up. What about January 6th? To which my response is, yeah, we've already taken care of the January 6th people. Same treatment now for these people, right? And then Me Gutsy is the name of the guy who's called into the show before. You can't make this shit up. So I say left-wing insurrection. Guy says, what about January 6th? I say, we've already dealt with them. And then another lefty comes in. And what do you think he accused me of? May 30th insurrection. What about January 6th? We've already dealt with them. What's that person going to say to me? I could have predicted it. I could have predicted that this is what would have been said. I was accused of... Hi, Donald Chamberlain says. Hi, Donna. Remember, they always accuse you of what they're guilty of. What do you think I was accused of? I don't know how big the delay is either. Not racisms. That's a good one. That's a good guess. That's right, Mr. White. I was accused of whataboutism. So here's the Democrat mind at work. I say, hey, remember 4 years ago, it's the anniversary of a left-wing insurrection? None of these people were held accountable. We need to hold them accountable. Left says, what about January 6th? I say, yeah, they've been dealt with. Now we need to deal with these people. And another lefty says, that's whataboutism, you coward. Because you see, the same lefty that's outraged that Elon Musk bought X, not because they're afraid they'll be censored, but because they demand 100% control. They want people that ideologically agree with them to control all of academia, which they basically do, all of the entertainment industry, which they basically do, almost all of the mainstream media, which they basically do, all of social media, which they did going into 2020, which they basically did. But now they've lost X, and they're like, that's not fair. It's not fair to only have 95% control. We deserve 100. Same mentality. How dare you make a thread talking about what you want to talk about? That's whataboutism. Whataboutism to what? These people are so ridiculous. If I stand up and I say something like, I don't think Clinton should have been involved with Whitewater, they'll go, whataboutism? That's whataboutism. What are you talking about? Whataboutism? What about Trump? Right, you're engaging in whataboutism. No, you're whataboutism. Now, I answered the question specifically when the second guy said whataboutism, but the first guy kept accusing me of not answering. What I said was, I feel that the people that were nonviolent on January 6th should receive similar, if not the same charges to the people that were nonviolent that broke into the Capitol under Kavanaugh. or with the Palestinian protesters? What punishment did they get? That set the precedent. That's the punishment the nonviolent January 6th people. The people that engaged in violence on January 6th, I feel they should get the same punishment that the people that engaged in violence on May 31st, 2020 got. What punishment did they get for their violence, for their insurrection? That's the punishment that the January 6th people. That's the punishments I feel should be dealt out. Now that's the answer. But what they want you to do constantly is they want the talking point and to redirect the conversation to get you to say what they want. They want you to say, I guess Trump can be bad. I guess January 6th people deserve to be charged. That's what they want. They're not going to give you the same concession. They won't. They don't care. So for someone like me, they can't get their head wrapped around, I'm not a Trump sycophant. I'm not someone who's always going to go to bat for everyone in January 6th. That's not true. I, probably faster than anyone in the country, was putting live streams up condemning the violence on January 6th on the day of January 6th. The problem is, more than any of the rioters that were there, or any of the rioters that were there May 31st, 2020, more than any crime that Donald Trump's accused of, more than any crime that Hillary's accused of, or Joe Biden, or Barack Obama, more of a threat to our country than any of that is corrupt institutions that are using their power to protect people that they like and to attack the people that they don't. Because these institutions are institutions like the FBI that has the power to lock you up, or prosecutors that have the power to lock you up, or media people, etc., that have the power to control our public narrative, or to spy on you with places like the FBI or the NSA. That's a bigger threat. Trump will be gone. Hillary will be gone. Biden will be gone. The FBI will still be there. White chocolate, thanks, I guess. But they can't accept that. Why? Because all they care about is Trump. They can't see 3 feet in front of their face. Trump, 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 Trump. Please tell me Trump's bad. Tell me there are things you don't like about Trump. Please tell me there's something you don't like about the January 6th people. Please, I need it. Please tell me there's something. Rob, I like you. You know how many times I hear this shit? Rob, I heard you talk about your job on Destiny Show. You seem like such a likable guy. But you just, oh man, you're just a cultist. You'll defend Trump no matter what. No, I won't. I gave a list. That was a thread that happened later. This Flauseny guy. He said, the thing I dislike, Rob, is just you'll defend Trump no matter what. I was like, I've criticized Trump all the time. Trump mishandled classified information. He did. I don't think he should be charged for it, but I'm consistent. I don't think Hillary should be charged for it, and I don't think Biden should be charged for it. Why? Well, because pretty much everyone in Washington mishandles classified information. If you're going to charge one, fine, charge all three. Cool. Same with FARA violations. I don't give a shit about Paul Manafort. There's a law in the book that says you have to register if you're lobbying for a foreign institution. Paul Manafort didn't register. Okay, lock him up. He worked with Hillary Clinton's campaign managers group, the Podesta group. Then lock them up too. No, they get to retroactively file paperwork. Manafort goes to jail. No, Hillary's claim, everybody gets immunity for destroying classified and mishandling classified information. Trump's team has a court date. And on and on and on. That's the issue I have. I don't think you should go to prison for trying to get dirt on your opponent from a foreign country. I think that's dumb. However, if you do think that Don Jr. should go to jail for meeting a Russian lawyer in Trump Tower, then why shouldn't Hillary's team, who met a suspected Russian spy? Unlike Trump's team, who didn't get dirt from that Russian lawyer, Hillary's team did get dirt and worked with that suspected Russian spy to get dirt. The person Hillary's team was talking to was investigated by the FBI for being a Russian spy. The person Don Jr. was talking to was never investigated for being a Russian spy. So in all aspects, what Hillary's team did was worse. And yet, the people that think Don Jr. should be in jail have no problem with what Hillary's team did. None. So I was asked to say some things I was critical of Trump about. He mishandled classified information. He spent money in his administration at a worse clip than Barack Obama. And as a fiscal conservative, I think that's outrageous. He bombed Syria. Outrageous. He says a lot of dumb shit. He claims that he drains the swamp, but he puts swamp people around him. He won't admit his mistakes. He's too interested in his ego to listen to people that tell him good advice about the direction he should be going. I criticize Trump all the time. He could have handled January 6th better. I think he should have came out immediately and been more strong with his language. But there, I gave it to him. You know what they did? Totally ignored it. Next post, oh, Rob, you'll never criticize Trump. You see? You see how it works? Even when you give them what they're asking for, they just pretend it didn't happen. Didn't happen. Right back to 15 minutes later. The thing about you, Rob, is you'll never criticize Trump. What are you talking about? Of course I'll criticize him. And he says, this is Fauci again, this is what he says. He says, well, the thing is, you always defend Trump from these charges. You always. Now, brief sidebar here. I'm not defending Trump from the charges. I think technically he broke the law in mishandling classified information. What I'm defending is that more important than whether or not someone technically broke the law is the selective targeting of them. Now, I told everyone during Russiagate, way back in 2017, I was writing about this, that what was going on was as follows. That they were going to come hell or high water, investigate Trump and everyone connected to him for any reason. And then they would find some sort of crime. And then they would say, once it came out that they were corrupt in starting the investigation, they would say, yeah, but look, we found crimes. And I said, I assume Trump has committed crimes just like I assume any billionaire has. Either they've legitimately committed crimes or their bookkeeping's going to be so intense that you'll be able to argue that they committed some sort of financial or bookkeeping crime. Guarantee it. That's true for 98% of billionaires, I'm sure, or multimillionaires. And I also assume 95% of people in politics in Washington probably arguably have broken campaign finance laws, insider trading laws, maybe illicit substance, maybe prostitution laws, whatever. So what that means is, if you have an FBI that says, we will target whoever we want, we'll get FISA warrants against them, we'll pierce attorney-client privilege, we'll raid their attorney's house in the middle of the night, you're going to find something. So that FBI effectively then controls who runs the country, because they will go after the people they want and they will protect the people they want, which is exactly what's happening. I'm shocked that they haven't found more significant crimes that Trump's committed. I'm actually shocked. Bookkeeping? That's your crime? Falsification of records? So although I agree Trump technically broke the law, no, probably. When it comes to the mishandling of classified information, he didn't do it as bad as Hillary Clinton. He didn't do it as bad as Joe Biden. So if we're in agreement that precedent matters, then he shouldn't be charged. And understand, equal application of the law is foundational to our country. It's foundational. When people say whataboutism, when you talk about this, not only does it show their bad faith, but it shows their stupidity. That's the concept that the entire legal system is built upon. That the rules apply to everyone. The way we interpret these laws and statutes should be one way across the board as much as possible. So if you have candidates for presidents or prominent politicians that have all mishandled classified documents, And you say, we're not worried about these two, just this one guy. And it's the same guy that when we have people that have falsified campaign records, allegedly, we're going to let the same person go over here with Hillary, and we're going to go after the same guy. And on and on and on. And then you talk to people like Conor that are like, well, you know, I say lock all the criminals up, and it might as well start with Trump. Right, it'll only be Trump. It ain't going to be Hillary. It ain't going to be Biden. It ain't going to be those other people. So when he says you won't criticize Trump, what he really means is you won't say Trump should be in prison. You won't say Trump shouldn't be allowed to run for president. Why won't you just be reasonable, Rob? Just be reasonable and say that. Hey, you're a cool guy, Rob. I like that you do home health care. I saw you on Destiny. You seem like a cool, funny guy. I think you'd have more support from some of our audience, you know, if you just said Trump should be in prison and Democrats should win all the time and whoever we think should be in prison should be in prison. Then you'd stop pointing out our double standards. If you would just do that, we'd think you're a cool guy, man. But you're unhinged as it is because you won't say that. Then this Fauci guy makes this argument. He goes, unlike you, if Hillary or someone got charged like this, I'd support those charges. This is what he said. If it was Hillary or Biden, I'd support the charges. I'd say, yeah, good, justice is served. I said, really? So can you point to me your post saying Hillary should have been charged or her team should have been charged for deleting subpoenaed evidence? That's non-negotiable. That's a crime. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about evidence subpoenaed. After the subpoena, they destroyed the evidence. That's it. There's no wiggle room. That is as clear-cut of an example of obstruction of justice as you'll ever get. Not, well, maybe she told someone to move boxes. Clear-cut. So if you're telling me, Fauci, hey, I would, you know, if a crime occurred with one of the people I support my side, I'd call for them to be convicted. Cool. Can you show me your post? Can I see your post saying that? Would you be shocked to learn, this is going to blow your mind, you ready for this? Would you be shocked to learn he was unable to provide any post showing he had ever said that? Isn't that shocking? Perhaps so, Pisco. Could you believe it? It's almost like, and this might shock you too, he's full of shit. Like all of these other lefties. I cannot do a backflip. I have a herniated disc, so I ain't doing any sort of flipping. That's how blatantly they lie to you. Oh, well, if Hillary's claim committed a crime, I absolutely would have called for them to be charged. Really? Okay, well, she did. Their team committed a crime. It's non-negotiable. And then he's like, oh, I didn't see evidence of that. What are you talking about? You didn't see evidence? The FBI admitted it. The Inspector General admitted it. Hillary's team admitted it. But you missed all that. And here's the funny part. What he says is, he's like, Rob, I've watched you debate a lot, and you're always engaged in whataboutism. Well, if he would have listened to me, then he would have heard the evidence, wouldn't have he? But he didn't. What a startling admission. So you watch me all the time, yeah? And you hear me talking about this double standard, yeah? And you hear me talking about evidence of Hillary's claim and stuff, yeah? Yet you've never heard this evidence. It's almost like you're not listening to what I'm saying. You're just listening. He's not saying Trump should be in jail. He didn't say Trump should be in jail. Oh, he's talking about a double standard. I'm not listening. I'm not letting Trump should be in jail. That's who they are. He went with the, I didn't have Twitter back then excuse. Okay, you have it now. I said, but okay, now that you know Hillary's team destroyed subpoenaed evidence, surely you're going to criticize the FBI as well, right? That's the same argument I had with Brianna Wu. Yeah, maybe Hillary should have been locked up. Cool, she wasn't. So why the double standard? You going to be critical of that?
You're a conspiracy theorist. Mm-hmm. They can't defend it. Can't defend it. Another argument I had with Pisco right before I came on. Hillary, with this case with Trump, this is before Pisco, there was someone that said, Matt Taibbi put out, like, listen, if we're going to pretend it's a big deal in election interference that Trump paid off a porn star, what Hillary's team did was worse, which was falsifying business records to pay to get dirt from a suspect to interfere in the election. And someone said, how is that a worse crime? And I said, well, Trump's team paid a porn star to apparently keep a sexual tryst silent. Hillary's team paid a law firm and a suspected Russian spy to get disinformation that they knew wasn't true, that they then fed to the FBI, that the FBI then used to get FISA warrants to spy on the Trump's team. That's way bigger of a crime and of a serious thing than Trump paying a porn star. Now, I brought this up yesterday in Jay Stock's panel with Pisco. Now, first, Pisco's going to try, keep in mind, he's always, anytime he hears these double standards, he's not going to say, yeah, that's bad, you're right. It's always, I have to defend it. I have to defend why the institutions didn't go after the people on my side. I have to. He'll throw a politician under the bus, but he has to defend the FBI. He has to defend these institutions because he needs to push back on me saying there's a double standard. He has to argue there isn't. So the argument he comes up with at first is, but Bragg's in New York. Have you seen Hillary's New York paperwork? Now that's true. He's making a true argument. For example, if she was in Texas and filed falsified business records in Texas, Alvin Bragg in New York couldn't charge her. All we have been able to see is her public records with the FEC, which were falsified. To which my response, and I have a better response now, but my response was, well, I think we could assume if she put that on the federal records and she was publicly saying, and her team was publicly saying, we didn't pay for the Steele dossier, that they also falsified them in the state. No, we don't know that. We don't know that. We don't know. But the better answer is, okay, for some reason, Cy Vance, who was the prosecutor before Alvin Bragg, and then Alvin Bragg himself, decided in 2021, hey, you know what? We need to look at Trump's business records from 2016 to see if he committed any campaign finance problems. 5 years after the fact, it was very important to them. Now, it just so happened that Bragg was running in a district where he's like, when he's running, he's bragging about how many times he sued Donald Trump and just, I'll hold the powerful to account. But we're supposed to believe it's not political. So my question is, if Bragg subpoenaed and Cy Vance subpoenaed Trump's records, which led to these charges, why didn't they subpoena Hillary Clinton's? With Trump, they had no underlying fact that he committed a campaign fraud or a falsification of records or campaign finance violation. With Hillary's team, the FEC said, yes, you did. So if you're the prosecutor in New York and you say, wow, the feds just said that Hillary Clinton falsified records, business records, to commit a campaign finance violation. And I know in New York, that's a felony. If you falsify records to commit an underlying crime, like campaign finance violations, that's a felony. Bragg knows that. Cy Vance knows that. That's why they went after Trump. So they already have the underlying crime and the fact that these records were falsified. Why not subpoena her state records? Why wouldn't he do that? But he didn't. And this allows Pisco to make the same argument that he makes and Destiny makes. When you are on the side of corruption and of the powerful institutions, you always get to appeal to authority. Always. Well, the science says this. Well, the experts say this. Well, the FBI says this. So if I say that these prosecutors are corrupt, their defense of these prosecutors, whether it be the FBI or state level ones, is going to be, nah, they said they're not corrupt. So just like with the Hillary Clinton, Destiny asks me, Rob, do you have any direct evidence that Hillary Clinton ordered the destruction of subpoenaed evidence? Now, I could do a Pisco. Well, what I'm really saying, but I don't because I'm good faith and I'm not a sack of shit like him. And I said, no. And he goes, oh, that's it then. That's it. No evidence. That's not my argument. My argument is someone from Hillary's team deleted subpoenaed records. They should have been arrested. Now, when it comes to Trump, what do? They arrest everyone around him. In fact, the way that this case got started with Trump, you want to know how it got started? Was because they went after Michael Cohen under the going after everyone connected Trump Russiagate hoax. And they were going to get Cohen on a bunch of shit. So he pled guilty to a crime that was bullshit because paying Stormy Daniels was never a campaign finance violation. That's bullshit, as we'll get to. But that's the crime they wanted him to plead guilty to. And I said at the time, the reason is because then they could say, oh, see, these payments were a crime. And they came from Trump if it wasn't a crime. You see it all over the place now. It's one of the Democrats' talking points today. Well, why wasn't the MAGA people protesting Cohen going to jail if it wasn't a crime? Right, that's what happened. It was set up back then. We also know that Dan Goldman was coaching Cohen on what to say. I don't know. Kevin James is way more in shape than me. He's actually he's fought MMA and was, I think, a wrestler. So what happens is the FBI's like, oh, records were deleted. Subpoenaed records were deleted. That's a crime, cut and dry. So they basically know who it is. They go to this guy, Paul Gambetta. They talk to him. They admit, we think he's lying. Lying to law enforcement, also a crime, can be charged. But they decline to charge him. And the reason is, we're afraid he'll lawyer up if we charge him. And we want to get to the big fish, not just him. So instead, they give him immunity. They're pretty sure, they know he's lying to them. They know there's only 2 or 3 people that work in his office that could have deleted these records. But instead of subpoenaing video records of the place, time cards, etc., forensic evidence, instead they're just like, you know what, we'll just give him immunity. Because we're afraid that he'll get a lawyer and then plead not guilty. So we'll give him immunity. That way we could get to the bottom of this. So they say, okay, now that you have immunity, did anyone tell you to do this? He goes, nope. What happened? Oh yeah, I remember a conversation I had 6 months ago that I was supposed to delete this stuff. But I forgot about that conversation for 6 months. And then once the subpoena came in, I was driving to work one day and I was like, oh shit. I had an oh shit moment where I remembered that conversation from 6 months ago. So I intentionally deleted subpoenaed records, which he knew was a crime. That's the story. That's what we're told. Go figure. Imagine this. Imagine you're watching The Sopranos, right? And they get one of Tony's underlings and they're like, all right, goddammit, we want Tony Soprano. Here's where we're going to sit down. Here's the deal. You arrogant sons of bitches think you run this town. I got to get a cigar or cigarette in. You think you run this town? Listen here, shithead. We're going to give you total immunity. Now, we want Tony's head on a platter. Tell us, who told you to commit all these crimes? And then Tony's underling's going to be like, oh, no one. I did them all myself. Am I free to go now? Thank you. We'll see you later. Thanks so much. And the FBI, the cop goes, God damn it, that's good enough for us. You're free to go. That's it. That's the FBI. They chose not to look for evidence. I can't get Hillary Clinton's emails. I can't get her phone records. I can't threaten to prosecute her underlings who committed the crime. so that they have an incentive to cooperate. That's what the FBI could do. And they chose not to. That's what they did. And that allows all of the establishment bootlickers like Destiny or Pisco to say, hey, Rob, did you see any evidence? Did you see evidence directly tying Hillary? No. Okay, then nothing there. Nothing to see. When my argument is never even that it was Hillary that ordered it, it's that someone committed the crime and they should go to jail. Someone in that team should go to jail. And if you give everyone immunity, then you're not going to find out if it was one person or if someone else ordered it. Now, the other part I didn't tell you is 2 or 3 days before Paul Gambetta deletes the subpoenaed emails, he actually had a meeting with Hillary's top lawyer, Cheryl Mills. Mills, by the way, is the one who allegedly told him to delete this shit 6 months prior. So she would have these types of conversation. If anyone was going to tell Gambetta to delete these, it would be Cheryl Mills. So when Paul Gambetta is asked, what did you and Cheryl Mills, what was that meeting about 3 days before you deleted the subpoenaed evidence? You know what his answer was? I don't remember. Now, I remember when General Flynn said, I don't remember, and they said, that's a lie, we're charging you with a crime. But not Paul Gambetta. They said, oh, okay, good enough for us. He doesn't remember. But they say, oh, you didn't see the evidence? It's the same here. Yes, you're right. I do not have access to Hillary Clinton's economic filings in 2016 in the state of New York. I am unable to obtain those because I do not have subpoena power. But the same prosecutors that thought that it was worth looking into Trump's 2016 records during the campaign because he suspected an FEC violation, even though the FEC said there was no violation, isn't interested in looking at Hillary Clinton's records from the same year when the FEC did say there was a violation. Not interested. And then that allows people like Pisco to go, nothing to see. Nothing to see here. Isn't that convenient? Wow, I guess that solves it. No double standard here. The double standard is, why didn't Bragg subpoena the records? Of course, it won't matter. Because if you say, let's hypothetically say those records were the same as the FEC. Now, surely, you think that she should be prosecuted as well, right? Falsification of records, the underlying crime of a finance violation, campaign finance violation, clear cut with Hillary. With Trump, there's an argument about whether or not his expenses were campaign expenditures. With Hillary's, there's no debate. It was opposition research. It was research she would have never paid for except that she was running for office. Its sole purpose was to help her win the election. Without a doubt, a campaign expenditure. And they falsified records to cover it up. That is a group of people breaking the law to prevent a person from being elected and then falsifying records to cover up. That's what they did. But then Pisco said, I think it was, basically he's going to make the argument, when Hillary's team falsified records, it was a misunderstanding. It was just a misunderstanding. That's the argument he's going to make. Oh no, when my side did it, no big deal. Now, I asked him, I said, how big of a deal do you think this crime is that Trump, he paid a porn star and it's a campaign finance violation? Oh, it's a big deal. It's a big crime. It's a big deal. It's very serious. But not when Hillary's team did it. Then it wasn't serious. Nope. You see? So they're happy that the prosecutors never looked for evidence. But even if they had the evidence, they would be perfectly fine with Hillary not being prosecuted because they don't give a shit anyways. Now, there's a lot of good arguments to make in the Bragg case as to why it was corruption. It's clearly a political witch hunt, which we'll talk about here after this. But probably the best line of attack is this. All of the charges, the underlying charges, so the way it has to work, and this is 99% of the people you see on X or your neighbor or whoever that's like, yay, Trump's going to prison, he's a criminal, he's a felon, he deserves it. They can't tell you what the crime was. What's the crime? And they'll say he lied on his business records. He falsified records. Right. The statute says he had to falsify business records to cover up an underlying crime. What's the underlying crime? 99% of the lefties, he falsified records. The three crimes that they're saying is he falsified other records. Think about that. A misdemeanor, because what Bragg did was this. For the first time in history, they took a misdemeanor and then that ran out the statute of limitations and then stretched it out into a felony by saying, actually, he falsified records to commit that misdemeanor, which is a felony. So you can't charge the underlying crimes because the statute of limitations has ran out. But the felony of falsifying records to commit those crimes you could charge. That's what Bragg's doing, which hasn't been done. The three underlying crimes are, one, falsifying records. So falsifying records is a misdemeanor. But falsifying records to cover up that you falsified records is a felony. You get that? Let me repeat that. They couldn't charge him with falsifying records. So instead they charged him with falsifying records to cover up that he falsified records. Now it's a felony. Now the statute of limitations doesn't apply. That's theory one. Remember that we will never know which theory, if any, or of any three or all of the three, that the jury bought. Because the judge said, you don't even have to agree on a theory. As long as you think there was an underlying crime. Good enough. That's section one. Section two was that it covered up tax expenses. Now, the prosecution admits that even if it's true that Trump classified these payments as income instead of as reimbursement, that means that he ended up, are you ready for this? Paying more taxes than he should have. That's right. One of the theories is, for the first time in history, an opposition party has prosecuted and convicted a former president and the leading opposition candidate for president again. And what was the crime? He paid more in taxes than he should have. That's it. That's why we broke the ice on prosecuting presidents. That's why we did it. Well, his records were wrong, and it ended up he paid more in taxes. Get that son of a bitch. That's the theory. Problem is, that paying more in taxes, that falsification of tax records, would have to be in the commission of trying to win the election, of helping him win the election or preventing someone else. But how's that? How would lying about your tax records so that you end up paying more in taxes, how's that helping you win an election? Can anyone make sense of that? Because that's what it needs to be. The crime that he's charged with is falsification of records in order to cover up a crime that was designed to help him win or Hillary lose. How does lying, even if he straight up lied, how does lying on your tax forms that makes you pay more in taxes make you more likely to win an election or hurt your opponent? Can anyone explain that? Yeah, I'll debate Destiny on it. Can someone explain how that's the case? What's the theory here? Well, it could have been that libertarians that don't like taxes would have been upset to find out that Trump was telling the truth on his tax forms. Or maybe people, when he paid more in taxes, would have thought that that made him a better person, and so they're more likely to vote for him. And the third theory is that it was a campaign finance violation. In other words, he was lying about his campaign expenditures to help him win the election. The problem is, as I've been saying 4 months, this is not a correct reading of campaign finance laws. While it is true that loans and payments are considered expenditures. The problem is, in order for this to be a campaign finance violation, the expenditure has to be basically for the sole purpose of benefiting the campaign. So the law says something like expenditures that go to benefit the campaign. So the way that Bragg is reading this and Judge Merchant is reading this is this. If you pay for something that benefits you in a campaign and you don't write it down as a campaign expenditure, then you have broken the law. That's a campaign finance violation. Now, what I've been saying is, but that's so broad, what that would mean would be, let's say you buy a new Corvette. And one of the reasons you buy the Corvette is you're going to do campaign ads in it. You're going to do a sweet commercial driving in this Corvette. Is that a campaign expenditure? Here's an example I didn't come up with, but the FEC Commissioner Brad Smith did. Hillary Clinton, when she first decided to run for Senate in New York, bought a house in New York. Now, it is undeniable that the reason she bought that house was so that she would qualify as being a resident of New York so she could run for office. Is that a campaign expenditure? If she didn't write down the purchase of that home in New York, did she violate campaign laws? It helped her in her campaign. She wouldn't have bought the house except to try to win a campaign. So is that a campaign expenditure? Of course not. Because think of it this way. If you say something's a campaign expenditure, then you're allowed to use campaign monies for it. So if we're saying that anything that helps you win the election is a campaign expenditure, therefore Hillary Clinton buying a house in a district so she could run for office, that would be a campaign expenditure. That would mean I could say, I'm running for office in Texas. And therefore, I would be able to buy a house with campaign contribution money. So I run an ad and say, I'm running in this district to beat so-and-so, and it's really important. And a bunch of MAGA people are like, that's great. And they start sending in donations. I say, thank you very much. I'll purchase a nice house with this. Is that the world that Bragg wants? He says, oh, you have to put that down as a campaign expenditure. Well, if it's a campaign expenditure, I'm allowed to use campaign funds. So that means now you could buy anything. Any campaign. Bernie Sanders raises $1 million, buy another lake house. Campaign expense. As long as you film an ad there, good to go. Right? Here's the example I came up with that might be the best to illustrate the absurdity of this. Okay? You ready for this? Trump's accused of paying off an extortionist to keep her quiet about a story he thought would embarrass him. We're told that's a campaign expenditure. That means he would have been allowed to use campaign funds. That means that any businessman that is worried, or any person that's worried that someone might divulge a story about you that's corrupt, you could run for office, collect all the money you want from donations, and then use that money to pay off those people. That's it. So anyone that's afraid, oh, I'm going to have to get this woman to sign an NDA. All you have to do is say, I know, I'll run for office. Then I'll get $100,000 of donations and go, here you go, ma'am. Yeah, that's an argument I'll get to as well, John. Does anyone think that, do you think for a second, remember, I'm going to debate Conor again. Remember when I first talked to Conor, he said, clearly Trump's guilty. You can't use campaign monies to pay off a porn star. Conor, that's what they're saying he had to do. You have it exactly opposite. They're charging him for not using campaign money. The fact that Conor's gut reaction was, you can't use campaign money, proves that he thinks it's absurd that this was a campaign expenditure. And if it wasn't a campaign expenditure, there is no law broken. There's no falsification of records then. But Rob, what about campaign contribution? You're only allowed to give up to $2,000. And Cohen loaned him the money. If it's not a campaign expenditure, then Cohen could lend him any amount of money he wants. If it's not a campaign expenditure, if Trump wants to write on his books, I paid $20,000 to Cohen for income, or I paid $20,000 for expense reimbursement, who gives a shit? So what? I paid $20,000 for a lawnmower I bought. Who gives a shit? That's a crime tantamount to, did you ever tip a waitress in cash? Oh boy, you didn't write down the proper expenditures. John Jacob brings up another point. If this was to affect an election, as the law says it must be, the first expenditure report wasn't until after the election. So how could you falsify documents to affect an election that's over? Now, I'll argue against all of the cases that Trump's facing. Even though I technically think he probably violated the classified documents mishandling. I just think everyone does it. And if you're not going to charge anyone else, then Trump shouldn't be charged. Same with FARA. If you're not going to charge anyone else, just Trump-connected people with failing to register as a foreign lobbyist. By the way, that's another pet peeve of mine. We're going to get into this debate on the second panel I'm doing next Wednesday. Conor and the right-wingers are going to say, there's not a double standard at the Justice Department, etc., because they're going after Hunter Biden. They're going after Hunter Biden because two whistleblowers spoke up, and then a judge spoke up that they were trying to give him a sweetheart deal. So then they had egg on their face and were like, well, shit, we got to charge him with something. And what have I told you the entire time? There is a almost less than 1% chance that they'll ever charge him before the election with a FARA violation. It won't happen. There will not be a trial of Hunter Biden about FARA violations before the election. How did I know that? How did I know? They have him dead to rights to FARA violation. A FARA violation means that he failed to register as a foreign lobbyist. There is no doubt that he was lobbying for Burisma and for Chinese companies. Zero. That's what he was doing. That was his entire job. We have emails saying, talk to your colleagues, talk to the politicians from Burisma. That's what he was doing. That's why he was being paid. He was lobbying for these people. Why isn't he charged with it? He didn't file. That's open and shut. Why not charge him? Instead, he's being charged with this gun crime. Why? It has nothing to do with the length of sentence that he might face. Like, well, for the gun crime, he could look at 1 year, but FARA, he could be 5. That's not why they're not charging him. They're not charging him because the gun crime makes Hunter look bad. But failing to register as a foreign lobbyist makes the Bidens look bad. Because that's connected to someone. It's the same reason that they charge Sam Bankman-Fried with a bunch of stuff, but not about illegal campaign contributions. Why? Why wouldn't they charge him with that? Well, because then someone might say, oh, who did those contributions go to? What were they aware of? And that's a lot of Democratic politicians. Same with FARA violations. Oh, he was illegally lobbying for hostile foreign institutions? Who was he lobbying to? They're not going to have that conversation. Nope. And yet Conor and a bunch of other righties, allegedly, are going to be like, oh, they're getting Hunter. Yay, good, they got Hunter. Meanwhile, the IRS agents wanted to look at the bank records of Kevin Morris. They were told by the CIA they couldn't. The IRS whistleblowers wanted to look at the bank records of Joe Biden. They were told that they couldn't by people, Leslie Wolf at the FBI. But that's okay. Conor says, that's okay. They finally went after Hunter. There, Trump, Hunter, same thing. It's not corrupt. The other thing is that I'm sort of going off on a tangent now with Conor. The gloves are coming up. That's gonna be a spark show. And I still like Conor, and it'll be in good humor on my part, but I'm gonna rip into him. His name is no longer Counterpoints. It's Progressive Victory Points, since he's paid for by Progressive Victory PAC. So I figure Counterpoints implies a name that is contrarian, that's arguing against the orthodox points or the mainstream points. Seeing as how Conor now just parrots the mainstream points, I didn't think Counterpoints was a good name for him. So I thought that Progressive Victory Points would be a far more fitting name for someone who works for Progressive Victory PAC and parrots their party line. So I will be calling him Progressive Victory PAC. When we were arguing about this in Discord, of course, Gibbs was going back and forth and with Conor, etc., about the Trump being found guilty. And Conor was weighing in about how Gibbs just kisses Trump's ass or something. And I said, hey, Conor, remember last week when we debated and you said Trump was clearly guilty because you can't use campaign money to pay a hooker? And then you've realized that it was the opposite? That was fun, wasn't it? Wasn't that fun? And you know what he said to me? Want to know what his response was, almost verbatim? Instead of saying, yeah, I was wrong about that, but I've looked into it, and this is now what I think, why I still think he's guilty. He didn't say that. He didn't. You know what he said? Yeah, Rob, because you're right, and now I'm quoting, quote, the entire legal system is wrong. Conor's official position is, and I'm quoting now, the entire legal system thinks the trial was completely on board and that Trump's guilty. That's Conor's argument. And that we can't question that. That's what the entire legal system says. So you can't question that. Now you might say, but Rob, that's odd. For example, you've probably seen constitutional law professor Jonathan Turley talk quite heavily about how corrupt this trial was. No, Conor says, who does Jonathan Turley think he is? Does he think that he's smarter than the entire legal system? Or maybe you saw Trump-hating CNN senior legal correspondent Elie Honig say that he thought this case was a sham. Doesn't Elie Honig know, Conor knows, that the entire legal system says that this case was on the up and up and good and Trump's guilty? Why doesn't Elie Honig shut his mouth? That's what Progressive Victory Points, Conor, is about. That's where he's come from. He's come from a guy, before he was paid by Progressive Victory PAC, that would say, wow, these whistleblowers speaking up about corruption, the system's corrupt, it's covering for the Bidens. To now he says, we have to trust whatever the legal system says because the entire legal system is behind it, and therefore we can question nothing. That's Progressive Victory Points. That's who he is. Not, let me look into the details of this case and see if you're right. I mean, imagine how embarrassing it would be to beat your chest, to go on a stream and say, well, clearly Trump's guilty. You can't use campaign money to pay for a hooker, to pay to silence a porn star. And you'd be like, Conor, you actually have it the exact opposite. They're saying, of course, not only can you use campaign money, you should have. And because you didn't write it down as a campaign expense, you falsified records. If I said that the FBI messed up FISA warrants, he'd go, yeah, but eventually it came out. That's what he would say. Yeah, but no one seriously got punished. You can't argue with the entire legal system. That's what he would say. That's how wrong Conor was. Imagine that. Imagine being so confident, I know this guy's good. Because you understand, the implication to saying it would clearly be illegal to use campaign funds to pay to silence a porn star. The implication is, what he is saying is, yeah, it is not a campaign expenditure to pay off a porn star. That's what he's saying. That's why he's saying you can't use campaign money. Because he's saying it's clearly not a campaign expense. But now, just a week later, after being that certain on stream, being that certain that Trump was guilty, because clearly this wasn't a campaign expenditure, he now has the exact opposite opinion. Clearly it was a campaign expenditure. And because Trump didn't write it down as so, he should be convicted. That's Progressive Victory Points. I thought about Counter PAC, because it's Progressive Victory PAC, but Progressive Victory Points is mwah, chef's kiss. So that's what he'll be. Now, I don't wish Conor. I still like Conor. I think he's a good family man. I think he's funny. I think he could argue well. But he's forever Progressive Victory Points. When I talk to Pisco, we will bring up Jamal Bowman. When I talk to Conor, he has progressive victory points. Not leaving these assholes live down their stupidity. So that was some like fights on Twitter and what have that I've had recently today. Now let me be honest. Oh, good. Here's Brock says, may vote for Trump. Still undecided, but the double standard what they're doing is Trump is BS. It is not a vote for Donald Trump. You could vote for, look, I assume, let's just assume this. I assume, Brock, that you're not voting for Biden. You might vote third party or leave the presidential ballot empty. I assume that's what you mean, right? When you say I'm not going to vote for Trump, but this is BS. And that'd be like my friend John Burke, right? That's his position. He also says this is BS, but he's like, I hate Trump. It's not a vote for Trump. That's not what this is at this point. You can vote for Trump if that's what you want. But if you're someone in your position, Brock, I would implore you to vote against the Democrats. And in a meaningful way. A vote for third party will not do anything. It won't. If Democrats win, it will be a mandate to them that we could lock up whoever the fuck we want. That will be the mandate. We did it. We locked them up. We were rewarded. We're going to continue to do it. It will be, at this point 4 years from now, it will be so much worse. Now, that doesn't mean they'll lock up the Republican candidate. The Republican candidate could be someone like Nikki Haley. That's fine. At the establishment level, people like Nikki Haley, they are completely acceptable because they're basically the same thing as people like Chuck Schumer or people like Joe Biden. So they'd be fine with that. They're not going to go after her, but they'd probably go after Vivek. They'd probably go after DeSantis. Anyone that could potentially make meaningful differences, they'll go after. And they'll say, we already did it once. We got away with it. Just like that. Have you seen how it's been accelerating? They had to hide with shame that they were spying on Trump with opposition research in 2016, 2017. Now they openly brag about it. Of course. It's a great thing. That's what I'm saying. You don't have to like Trump. It's the equivalent of this. You might say, but Trump won't do anything about the corruption. I agree. I actually agree with you. I think there's about a 5% chance if Trump wins, he'll have policies or take actions that do anything meaningful to stop the level of the corruption in these institutions. I think he'll do the same shit he did last time. Put a bunch of people around him that he'll say they'll take care of it, and then they'll do nothing. Bill Barr type people. John Bolton type people. That'll stab him in the back. Same old shit. It's a persuasive argument. But what's the alternative? On one hand, you have a guy that won't do anything to confront the corruption. And on the other side, you got people that are going to advance the corruption tenfold. So this guy, corruption's right here. If this guy wins, corruption stays here. This guy wins, corruption ends up way over here. Yeah, it's still bad you'd say that. Why is it Trump? But who are you going to vote for? RFK? He ain't going to win. You know it. Everybody knows it. He's not winning. Unless something crazy would happen and someone would drop out. But it's not going to happen. There is going to be a Republican and Democrat candidate. In a normal year, a protest vote, maybe you could deal with. That's fine. But we're literally talking about if the Democrats win this election. They literally, for the first time in the history of the country, have convicted on the most bullshit, thinnest of crimes, a paperwork dispute. Misfiling of paperwork. That's why I'm saying, for me, I'm not voting for Donald Trump. I'm voting against the Democratic Party. Now, I could vote for Trump, and certainly it's going to be Trump's name that I fill out in the ballot. But he wasn't my first choice. And to me, my enthusiasm for him is far less than my enthusiasm for my outrage at the brazen corruption. So that's why I'm imploring, if you were a DeSantis supporter or if you're a moderate, you should vote for Trump. Not because you're voting for Trump, but because if you don't, if you see what this was and this corruption, it's going to be 10 times worse. They're not going to stop. Even if Trump does nothing to stop corruption, if he doesn't advance it, there's a hope that the next guy that comes along could do something about it. Maybe it's DeSantis 4 years from now. Maybe it's Vivek. But there's a solid chance if Democrats get a win and accelerate this, first it'll be going after their opposition. Then it'll be, we'll go after more mean people. We'll lock them up. Oh, you told mean memes? A friend of mine in text message said, I don't know if Trump's in on it or if he's not. There's an argument to be had. Why didn't Trump drain the swamp? And there are people that say that's because Trump's just the illusion of being against them. He's actually in it with them. I don't believe that. I don't. I'm going to be brutally honest with everyone here. Okay? This is what I believe. I believe that these institutions have such a control over all of these institutions that they can't risk losing any of it. They can't. They will come together at the top level, Republican and Democrat, to prevent any person that they perceive as an outsider. They can't have it. Trump is that person. However, Trump desperately wants to be part of that club. That's what I believe. I think Trump would happily be part of that club. Except instead of them bringing him in and then trying to control him, they're like, we'll just attack him. And so Trump's instincts are to attack back. Trump's a big mouth. Trump's petty. Trump's not the perfect candidate. There's a lot of things I don't like about him. I've talked about a lot. He probably won't drain the swamp, even in a slight amount. But I don't believe that it is the best acting job in the history of the world that Trump's backstage with these people going, cool, now pretend to throw me in jail. And no. They despise him. Not because of who he is, as far as his policies and things like that, or because he's a billionaire. They despise him but what he stands for. And this isn't, oh, he's this amazing guy. He stands for something like Captain America. That's not what I'm saying. He stands for, as in he represents to these people in positions of power, someone not in their group taking over. They can't have that. It doesn't matter if that someone's good or bad or smart or stupid. They don't care. It can't be anyone. It can't be Jill Stein. It can't be RFK. It can't be Trump. It doesn't matter if it's left or right leaning to them. Now, they push the politics of the left leaning because the left's won the culture war. And the left stupidly accepts it. Most of them, anyways. So right now it's Trump. They'll go after Trump. Once they win, then they're going to be more brazen. You want to know how it ends? With my neighbor calling the police on me because I didn't say my prayers to whoever the dear leader is at that point. I've read this book. I know where it goes. Oh, this is outrageous, Rob. Dude, you know how many neighbors were calling neighbors during COVID for not wearing masks? For having people visit their house? And if you think the Democrat Party's beyond locking up people, just look at the meme guy they locked up. Of course, it'll start with censorship. After the election, their first target will be Elon Musk because they have to control the flow of information. And they view X at this point, which isn't perfect. And no, Elon Musk isn't some greatest guy that's ever lived, like some person beyond reproach. He's not. There are flaws with him like all of us. And no, he's not a free speech absolutist. And yes, he retweets things or says things that are wrong at times. But he, again, represents someone that they feel is an outsider, and he is in charge of a platform where a lot of public discussion is occurring, and they can't have that. So you've already seen the ground being laid, all the lawsuits that are filed after him. There will be more. And you know what? A left-wing jury will convict him. Why? Because they feel that they're morally superior. It won't matter what the details of a case are. If it goes to a jury trial in a place like D.C. or a place like New York, whatever it is, Elon Musk will be convicted. Because the public will be primed that he's an evil, right-winging, MAGA-loving, terrorist insurrection, blah, blah, blah. All the things they said about Trump, they're going to say about Elon. They'll go after other politicians that they think, Thomas Massey's, Chip Roy's, people like that they think will be effective against them. Then they'll drop down to the next level. You already see them going after Steve Bannon. You've already seen them spying on Tucker Carlson. You've seen them raid James O'Keefe's house. It will get worse. Remember the Obama administration wiretapped Fox News contributor James Rosen and his parents' phones. It will be worse. Then they'll go after the whistleblowers from places like the IRS. There's been testimony that they've been gone after whistleblowers in the FBI and the IRS. It'll be more harsh. They'll further weed out anyone in those agencies that aren't strict institutionalists, that agree with the party line. Then they'll go down the list more. Now it's big influencers. You see them going after Alex Jones. Someone like Dan Bongino. And then they'll eventually get to people like us. Might not be next year or 5 years from now, but that's what'll happen. If we're not censored, if we speak out, they'll come for us. Don't believe me? Look how in the UK, how many people get arrested for saying things that are considered transphobic. It's coming here. It's coming. Oh, what's that? You were criticizing AIPAC and the state of Israel? Maybe we'll pay a visit to your home. Oh, you had something to say about Pride Month? That's a no-no. Oh, you criticized the Democratic president and said that you think he's a traitor? Maybe we need to visit your home. It is here, and it's going to accelerate tenfold. Because if they could do all of this, and if the public could see it, and the public says, we accept that, or if the cheating's enough that looks like the public accepts it, and they win the election, that's a mandate. They'll continue to do it even more. So, Brock, I implore you, and many others, you don't have to like Donald Trump. But you should vote for him because he is the only reasonable chance to stop another Democrat administration. It's not even Democrat, it's establishment administration that's going to accelerate the lawfare and the corruption and the authoritarianism. Now, I know John Burke, for example, has been going off, and I went a little back and forth with him, and I know Aftershock and John Burke really got into it. I'm not arguing this point with him. But I think that it's foolish, because of your hatred of Trump, to vote in a way that you know increases the chances of the authoritarianism that you see right now. The last thing I'll talk about is, I like Bret and Eric Weinstein. I think they're great. But one of the things about them is, as much as they'll complain about wokeness and about the excesses of the left, they always have to hedge and say, the right's bad too. They are the definition of the both sides do it intellectual. So Eric Weinstein writes this big, long post on X where he's like, oh, it's a sad day to watch what the Democrats are doing. It's very much like when they stopped Bork, because if you don't know, Justice Bork, what was it like in the 80s, where they just had this terrible smearing of him when he was being confirmed as a Supreme Court judge. And he says Bork was seen as an outsider and Trump's seen as an outsider. And I just fear it's going to get so much worse. And this is taking our country down a dark path. And the Democrats have opened Hell's Gate and blah, 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 blah. It doesn't matter if you support Trump or the Democrats. You have to realize it. Sounds good, right? Okay. And then, of course, he has to be like, but, I agree. Trump's an existential threat. I want someone new to come up and... Even at this moment. Now, I believe Eric and Bret Weinstein are Jewish, and I think that they are very fed up with what they see as a lot of these Palestinian protesters. So what I would say to Eric Weinstein is, imagine October 7th occurs. And all of a sudden you're seeing images of, there were bad images that came out there. Clearly innocent people, girls being thrown in trucks, dragged about. And one of the things that happened was, and by the way, this is one of the things, my takes on this, it doesn't matter if the accusations of how many innocent people were killed or sexually assaulted, it doesn't matter. What matters is people believed it and cheered it on. So don't get me wrong, it's not that it doesn't matter, but what I'm saying is, if you were someone who believed that and cheered it on, you're a piece of shit. You can't later say, oh, well, I don't think it happened. When you thought it happened, you cheered it on. So imagine, and what if it was even worse? What if actually videos were released of sexual assaults? Of babies being crushed. Imagine that was released. And Weinstein is like horrified, and I write a post that says, my God, today's a somber day, these evil Hamas people, But Israel's an existential threat too. How do you think the Weinsteins would react? What do you think they'd say? They'd say, even if you don't like Israel and you have disagreements and you don't think we should be involved in Israel, you chose today to highlight the atrocities of Hamas, but made sure you threw in, but both sides do it. You made sure today of all days, while this occurred, to do that. That's what the Weinsteins are. What that is, that's actually one of the most effective defenses for the authoritarian impulses of the Democratic Party. Of course, people like me are going to speak up against it. But I'm not enough, and we're not enough. There have to be people in the middle that say, enough is enough. We're going to stand up against this. But what happens is you have so many of the people in the middle, like Joe Rogan or Bret Weinstein or so many else of them that'll go, oh, this is terrible, bad. Let me tell you 50 ways how this is so bad for our country. It's horrible. But Trump's an existential threat too. Really? The mean tweets, right? They got him, huh? That helps the Democrats almost more than anything. Yeah, well, what can we do? Both sides suck. Maybe someone new will come along. Oh, well. My friend Tom Kennedy, when I did the show Thursday when Trump got convicted. But didn't Trump say lock her up? Yes, he did. Trump said lock her up, and Trump said 3 instances of locking up. He said lock her up to Hillary. He said he wanted people locked up that participated in the Russia collusion hoax against him. And he said that the FBI and Bill Barr should look into Joe Biden with the Burisma stuff. I agree with all 3 of those, by the way. Well, no, that's not true. I agree there should have been investigations into all 3 of those. However, I always thought it was stupid that Trump said lock her up. And this sets me apart from many people in my audience. I didn't think Hillary should have been locked up. I thought she was guilty of mishandling classified documents. I did. By the book, she's guilty. Gross negligence or willful, which I think it was willful, but nonetheless, easy to prove gross negligence, mishandling classified documents. Easy. The reason I thought she shouldn't have been charged is because I knew, even back then, that basically everyone mishandled classified documents. I don't know if I ever said she should go to jail in the heat of a moment, but I've been quite consistent for years and years that I didn't think she should go. Even if you thought she should go, I don't think it's smart for that to be a slogan. Because you have to understand that if you get locked up, the other side's going to say, hey, big boy, you said lock her up. Now you got locked up. Tough shit. So it's not the most intelligent thing to say, but it's just a slogan. What steps did Donald Trump take to lock up Hillary Clinton? Zero. He talked about crimes that were already made public before the election. Said she should go to jail for them. I don't think it's a good thing he said it, but he didn't act on it. The Russia collusion people, they should have been locked up. Yes, if you illegally spy on a president of the United States using opposition resource, sourced by a suspected Russian spy, accusing Trump of colluding with Russians, when you know that's what Hillary's team's doing, absolutely. And I've said this from day one. It's not Hillary that's the villain, the big villain in that story. It's the FBI. As unethical and immoral as it might be to go to suspected Russian spies to get dirt on your opponent, it's far worse for the FBI to know that and then use it to spy on your opponent. That's the real criminal acts. That's the real sedition. Should he be saying lock them up? No. If he's going to choose his words better, he should probably say something effective. They need to be investigated and held accountable to the fullest extent of the law. That's the way to say it. Then he said investigate Biden. Also dumb to say before the election. However, I get his frustration. I'm guessing, but this is what I honestly believe. I believe Trump knew from a long time that Biden actually did that quid pro quo to benefit his son. He wanted the prosecutor fired that was supposedly looking into his son. And Trump thought, oh boy, when this evidence comes out, that's it, Biden's done. Because Biden actually did what they accused me of doing, colluding with hostile foreign powers. And then what did I say? The evidence came out and it got censored everywhere. And 49 intelligence agencies, or 49 intelligence professionals came out and said it's Russian disinformation, etc., etc. And the story went nowhere. And I think Trump realized then I lost the election because he trusted Bill Barr. And I think he was probably talking about this and talking about the evidence of Russiagate. Oh, once the American people see that they illegally spied on me, that it was all bullshit. Once the American people see what Joe Biden's really about. And then what happened? His team kept saying, no, Mr. Trump, you got to leave us do it by the book. And trust us, it'll come out. Leave us do it by the book. Leave us do it by the book. The truth will come out. And then they buried the truth. That's what they did. They released it in a way that was feckless. And then Trump realized, uh-oh. So he's like, they need the law. They need to go after Biden. Now, again, should he have said it? Probably not. Is it a huge deal? No. Plenty of Democrats run on they should arrest Donald Trump. I don't think that's disqualifying. But he asked Barr to look into them. So, presidents have the right to do that. Obama asked them to look into Donald Trump. Joe Biden himself personally suggested going after Mike Flynn as the Logan Act. Where are the Democrats there? You see, what it always amounts to is Trump's words are horrible crimes. So Trump saying lock her up is a horrible crime. Democrats actually locking him up is okay. You see? If instead of saying lock her up, Trump would have instead of just appointed someone that he knew would go after her and lock her up, would Democrats say, oh, that's fine, no problem? They changed a law for the first time in history to go after Hillary for a bookkeeping violation, put a gag order on her. A judge ran the case that donated to the Stop Hillary Clinton's radical agenda. The prosecutor campaigned on his record of going after Hillary Clinton. It's in a deep red area where over 80% of the people voted against Hillary Clinton. You think Democrats would have accepted it? You think they'd have said, oh? Or do you think they would have said, wait a minute, the first time in history you went after a presidential candidate, you had to make up this novel legal theory that's never existed? Of course not. Is anyone still there? Still type? I don't see any of the chat. I'm sorry, though. They don't care. Oh, all right. They don't care at all. Yeah, now I'm getting some chant. Yeah. The problem is, like all this talk, what about an Alabama jury? They'd vote not guilty if he was not guilty. If the case was as flimsy as this one against Trump, because the truth is, most right-wingers aren't cultists that will go after their opponents for anything necessary. They're not. So it'd still be a not guilty verdict. That's the sad part of this. There ain't no Republican AG that has the balls to go after them. And even if they did, unless it was a rock solid case, it would be a not guilty verdict because most people would say, oh, this could be really damaging and it has to be beyond, Now, luckily, if there was an AG that had the stones to do it, there's plenty of evidence of crimes that they've committed. We'll see if Ken Paxton will. What do you mean he would? Then do it. We'll see. Yeah, the Hunter Biden gun and tag stuff. They got him. Kicking and screaming they were drugged. What do you think sort of jail time Hunter Biden's looking at? What do you think? If any, what do you think the chances are he ever serves? That his dad doesn't pardon him? I'm telling you, I'm looking for it. I'm looking for Biden to come out and call for the pardoning of Trump and to look magnanimous. It'd be a shrewd political move. Telling you. Now they might just hate Trump so much and think they get away with it, they don't give a shit. Yeah, time served, right? That's okay, Conor will say. Well, it's still justice. That's what he'll say. That's what the good right-wingers will say. So, I saw that grin of Biden. Yeah. He is the authoritarian they claim. Anyways, my friend Tom Kennedy, he called in and said the same thing, right? Trump said lock her up. Imagine that. Imagine that. That's. Imagine being like, wow, what corruption? Oh well, Trump said lock her up. So that's your point today. That's the biggest point you have to think about. And you see it all over at, oh, Trump said lock her up. Now, I will say one thing I saw was Trump did say in 2016 if Hillary was convicted and a felon, then she should drop out. She shouldn't run. That's funny. That is. Listen, here's the truth. You won't find someone that speaks out against this corruption more than me. But you do have to put some of the blame on Trump. Trump wasn't listening to people like me who said they are going to come out, knives out after you. You have to expose the corruption. You should be pardoning Julian Assange. You should be pardoning Edward Snowden. You should be releasing unclassified the documents that proves the corruption at the FBI. You should be public with all this, demanding investigations, subpoenas. But he didn't. He trusted Bill Barr. Any QAnon people out there, he trusted the plan. How'd that work out? Are they still saying it? I haven't followed. Does anyone know anything about Q, by the way? Because I have a bone to pick with John Burke about this a little. There's a person on X by the name of Tracy Beans. Now, when I used to fight with QAnon people on several websites, I could have swore that she was one of the big social media QAnon accounts. Can anyone confirm that? Tracy Beans. She used to talk a lot about court cases and stuff with Trump, and then she eventually came out as a DeSantis person. And I thought I remember her saying, like, oh, a lot of my supporters now don't like me because I've been critical of Trump and blah, 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 blah. Oh, thanks, Liam. I'm not the best guy in the world. I don't even have a back. So she's not Tracy Beans wasn't QAnon? Okay. Then I'm mistaken. I am not gay. I'll look it up later tonight. I thought I remember hearing it. If not, then it's a moot point. But he was accusing someone of being a QAnon person the other day, and on the same day he interviewed Tracy Beans, and I was going to say, dude, if you brought on... Yeah, I mean, there was a guy, what was his name? The Patriot Hour guy. He was nice, dude, man. I liked talking to him. Great. Big QAnon guy. And I remember talking to him in like 2019, and that it was coming, trust the plan. I said, what are you going to do if Trump loses the election and none of these people are going to be held accountable? What would you do? He's like, I admitted I was wrong. Last I heard, he was still doing a show. He hasn't admitted he was wrong. Sucks. But yeah, when you see those people, Trump said lock her up. I mean, it's fair to say he did say it. And if you're the type of person that was ecstatic at the thought of Hillary Clinton being locked up, you can't really blame the Democrats for being ecstatic that Trump's being locked up. And I don't blame them. I think they're stupid. I think karma's a bitch. But you could blame the corrupt people doing it. I'll leave you with this sort of a funny story. So I got my herniated disc now, which I can tell it's getting time to take medicine. So I go to the physical therapist yesterday, and then I go to this massage lady. And this massage lady, like, she kicks the shit out of me. Like, she gets her elbow just like on your spine. It's just like, ugh. Like, I mean, and she's very political. She's of a very similar political persuasion than me. Smart lady too. And we'll be talking, and like, imagine this, like, she got her knuckle like right here, and she'll be like, what do you think about this? And I'll be like, yeah, you know, and you're trying not to like look like a sissy. You're like, yeah, I hear you, you know, as she's like literally beating the shit out of me. You know. So for the first time, she said something that I disagreed with. So I'm laying on the table, and it's like, you know, elbows, fucking, you know, all kinds of shit. It hurts, you know, and she's getting in like rib cage and shit. And she's like, you know, they ought to give, you know, I think that all the people that are against forgiving the student loans are just wrong because of XYZ. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to get into why. And I'm like, now the way I handle this situation normally is I'm very affable. I always try to find a way to, when it comes to politics, to sort of agree with the person while still giving my honest opinion. So I'd say something like, I see your point, you know, so many people got screwed over, whatever. I just think that, you know, we shouldn't really use tax dollars. Maybe we should use the endowments. Take away the endowments from the colleges and give that money to the kids. So instead of saying, no, that's ridiculous, you know, I kind of said, well, I don't really agree with that, but you make a point, you know. You know, so that's how I would approach that situation normally. But I couldn't help but wonder, like, this woman who's already, like, beating the shit out of me, am I going to start arguing politics with her? I felt like if I did, she'd be, like, giving me the Randy Savage elbow, you know, off the top of the chair or something. So I was like, yeah, whatever you say. It sounds great. You're not going to disagree with that lady. It'd be a mess. So I was just like, yeah, it sounds great. Sure. I thought it was funny. I was amused. All right. You probably won't see me till Wednesday. Wednesday, maybe we'll do another mobile stream here. I thought this went well, actually. All things considered, had a decent amount of viewers. And sucks for my Twitch audience and Rumble and elsewhere. But yeah, no kidding, Will. Yeah. So maybe you'll see me some evening here coming up. But remember, keep checking my channel every weekday around noon. I'm trying to get new videos up. So check the YouTube channel for that around noon. I hope you all had a tremendous evening. Wednesday's going to be a good show. It's going to be 2 debates. I'll be debating a bunch of lefties, such as Pondering Politics and Pisco, at 6:30 or 6, something like that. And then debating a bunch of righties, like Progressive Victory Points, not really a righty, I guess, Jeb Tan and Tiberius D, at 8:30. So it'll be a long night of a show. 2 debate panels one night. Should be fun. So I think the audience will dig that. I'll be ready for it. So thank you so much, everyone. Remember, I'll leave you with this. I think it's probably ethical to say this. Listen, all of this stuff is crazy. The corruption's becoming more and more brazen. If you really want to fight back, the moral and the most strategic thing to do is fight back with information. Don't lose your head. If you're really pissed off, find solace in the fact that you have a family that loves you, or that you have people that count on you, or even if you don't have a family, that you're not close with, or you don't have neighbors or something, there are people that appreciate you. There are things in your life that you could do, because the most important thing in life is, if you're religious, your relationship with God, or can you look yourself in the mirror? Do you know you're doing the moral right thing? Those things are more important at the end of the day. They really are. So don't get depressed. Don't lose your head or whatever. And even if you did want to lose your head and you think you would help, you won't. You'll just hurt your cause by doing anything that's ridiculous and stupid. And anyone telling you that you should go out and do something aggressive or physical or violent, they're probably a Fed, and they're probably going to lock you up. They do not have your best interest in mind. So please, 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 anytime you hear me or anyone else talking about this stuff, I assure you, despite my herniated disc, despite the serious things I'm talking about that I really believe in, I'm one of the happiest people you'll ever meet. I have a great family. I want to live a long time with them and enjoy my family. So, I wish you all that same advice, same success. I really do. So please, please, I know that it's easy to get a dark picture, but it's not really dark, because we're doing what we can. You're not guaranteed to win in this world. You're not. We may lose. We may end up with Biden or whoever replaces him, and then another Dem, and then another Dem, and then a Nikki Haley Republican. It may happen. It may be the more and more corrupt as we go. But we tried, and we lived our lives in a way that was righteous. So that's what's important. Don't fall for this bullshit. Don't fall for it. Those people are morons, or FBI agents that are telling you to engage in that. Even if they're legitimately pissed off, you are going to hurt your cause. And look for it to happen, whether it be a false flag or not. Look for some crazy Trump supporter to do something and them to blow it up. That's the next step in this. That doesn't mean it's a false flag, though it very well may be, as we've seen with the Gretchen Whitmer shit. The feds are dutifully right now trying to inspire any violence they can amongst Trump people. Guarantee it. Guarantee. Hopefully it happens right around the time of the convention or 2 months before the election is what they'd want. Don't fall for the trap. It won't help. So, all right, everyone. Thanks so much for listening. I had a great time tonight, and maybe I'll poke on sometime this week, but I'm at work straight through Wednesday. So either you'll see me Wednesday or you'll see me strictly on YouTube. If you're one of my other audiences, I can only do YouTube now while I'm not at home, because I have to use my phone to stream. So thank you so much, everyone. Hope you enjoyed the show. As always, have a good one. Good night, everyone. If I can figure out. There we go.